Hello, everyone. I am Claudiu Murgan, of the host of the Spiritual Inspire podcast, and my guest today is Indra Rinsler. Indra have been a seeker and devotee on the spiritual path for more than 50 years. During his travels, he observed his human brothers and sisters from all cultures and reached the conclusion that we are not so different. You can find more information about him at www.indrarinsler.com. Indra, thank you very much for joining me today.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
I know it's a long distance. You are in India these days traveling. I think is your early pilgrimage to India. So I want to start the discussion by asking you, how exactly did you come about knowing and becoming a devotee of Paramahansa Yogananda? And I'm also one of his devotees as well.
Okay. Well, I read Autobiography of a Yogi. That was a good place to start. I had a friend. This was 1971, and I could have found the book before, but I had a friend who I met. I believe it was later in 1971, and she ended up moving to the community, the ashram that I lived for 20 years. She moved up by 1973. She had moved up, and I had visited her. And she was an influence. Somebody that I knew that lived there was a big influence. But I had already read the book, and uh, I think that's where it started. And then it every year it got more. I got more pulled in. I got more, and barriers were broken. It seemed to make more sense. And we took discipleship in the mid, I don't know whether it's 75 or 76. And then we ended up moving to this community by 79.
And how did you find the life in the ashram? And have you interacted with Daya Mata at that time?
Never interacted with Dayamata. We were in a organization that I was part of an organization that was started by a direct disciple who had left SRF Dayamata. I read her books, of course. I guess that's an interaction.
And are you talking about Kriyananda?
Kriyananda, yes. You know Kriyananda, yeah. Kriyananda, absolutely. How did I find life? It was about discipleship, when I left in 99 and I started traveling and I met people from other paths that hadn't been, I mean, when I was there, I met some people from other paths, but it wasn't really quite the same as to when I left and I met other people. I found that, or other devotees. I found that the point of the ashram was that we learned about discipleship, and we learned about discipleship in a way that the devotees who hadn't lived in ashrams didn't really understand, and that it was a course in respect for the guru, respect for the master. It was the old that they used to call Yogananda master, and the idea was, why do you give your power away to him? And it was actually that he was a master and we weren't. We weren't masters in the same way, and so it got kind of turned into a freedom rather than a lack of freedom. Is that clear? That was really what I learned, the best parts of what I learned there.
So it is my understanding that you first live in the ashram and then later on in life you build a family, had kids and grandchildren. So have you been able to continue your spiritual life unencumbered by any family ties similar to what Lahiri Mahashaya did in his lifetime?
Well, you sure are a knowledgeable one. Yes, I already had the kids actually, and in
Oh,
fact, we were one of the first families that moved there, especially with when we moved there, we had two, and then we had a third, and it was like it was at that time in the early 70s, it was very, because of Kriyananda, it was very monkish and nunnish. It was very monastery, and it's like, oh, well, sorry you got kids, you can't lead the spiritual life. Well, that was ridiculous. It was ridiculous then, still ridiculous. Um, so so that's a path. I mean, that's a path. I mean, it isn't the path that most of the teachers, most of the gurus followed, because they didn't get married and didn't have kids. But that's still a regular path, and not an easy path by that matter. So the spirituality, I think, if I can, keep going with you here, I think the thing is that I understood spirituality in a broader way. I found that leaving the ashram, like, my eyes opened to a whole world, and it was like, whoa, there's devotees all over the place. And I like to say that I find community everywhere, that I found that the attitude that was sometimes in spiritual community, I don't want to pinpoint it, but I'll just say generalize it, is that this is my community, my brothers and sisters, and they aren't. And I kind of found that to be kind of falsish. And so my community doesn't have any boundaries. It doesn't end. And it's everybody. And my God, I came back to Rishikesh after 4.5 years. It's where I'm staying. I'm not actually traveling. I mean, I guess I traveled to get here, but then I just stay here. But I've been coming for 25 years, and after COVID and people didn't come, and I come here, and all the shop owners, even some of the beggars, it's like, hey, how you doing? Wonderful to see you. I don't think I would get that in the ashram. So it's all family. And I found that when I was able to drop all the barriers, I don't know if that's the right way I want to say it. When the barriers dropped, so I don't want to say I was able to, let's just say when the barriers dropped, and I've been to 56 countries, and I found that everywhere you passport in, passport out. And I found these barriers to be kind of false. I mean, they're man-made, is what I mean by that. And so it became clear to me that people are the same everywhere, and community is everywhere. And so I found it to be expansive, and sitting with other teachers, I found to be expansive, and reading spiritual books just as good as the ones I was reading, and maybe even better. Uh, and idiot that I am, I come to find out that the gurus never left, that they have been there from the beginning. It's like we wake up to this news that, oh, the guru is there, but I mean, like, they were there from the beginning, before the beginning, and who knew? So they've been guiding me the whole time. I can't tell you how many astrologers have had mystical experiences from Uteshwar. You know, I mean,
mhm.
I mean, uh, 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 you know, uh, um, David Cochran, who has started vibrational astrology, was a SRF member from 1973. Never knew this. Only know him from Facebook about 5 years. has practiced Kriya every day for 50 years. He was part of it. That's vibrational astrology. Jeff Green, who started evolutionary astrology, was a Yogananda devotee. Before, one night in a dream, evolutionary astrology was dropped on him in one download one night by Yuteshwar. All of evolutionary astrology, and Stephen Forrest came afterwards and didn't have the dream. And I mean, these guys have been busy, it's like, what are they doing? Well, they were probably there with Dane Rudger and Mark Edmund Jones, for all I know, guiding. Babaji was probably guiding Madame Blavatsky when she visited India in 1840 and 1850 here, when she brought astrology back to the West, and the whole astrology movement started from Madame Blavatsky. And who's to say that Babaji wasn't doing that at the same time? So I mean, I have been totally humbled and surrendered to the idea that these guys are putting in the work, and that I'm just a little guy who feels rather blessed to be able to even have a glimpse of these truths.
Yes, indeed. And I know people who mention Sri Yukteswar's Holy Science book many, many times, and they got influenced by him and what he wrote about the yugas. So
Yes.
that knowledge came forward in the last, let's say, 10 years with much more force than before.
Yeah, so that was part of my point, is that the book was written in 1894 when Yukteswar met Babaji, and Babaji asked him to write a book, which turned out to be the Holy Science, in which he mentions the yugas and gives dates. And they're the only ones in India, in the world, that you're Yuteshwar Yogananda devotee, if you know and believe that we're not in Kali Yuga anymore, we're in Dwapara Yuga, which makes total sense. And to me, and it explains everything. And everybody else is figuring out ways to contort in order to make sense of, no, we're still in Kali Yuga, but what about the atomic age, and what about the internet, and what about universal health care? Oh, well, that's part of Kali Yuga. Yeah, I don't think so. That is not Kali Yuga. That is Dwapara Yuga. So yeah, so it's well, they have a lot of work to do, that's why they keep job security.
Yes, and going back to your notion that there are no borders, and the border is just a construct of the mind, and communities overall or everywhere, is that Yogananda had the same mindset. He tried not to make any difference between races, color, cultures, and embrace everyone and treat everyone equally. And he loved to talk to anyone who will cross his path and try to better their life.
Yes, and somehow I got there on my own, and it probably wasn't my own, but I've had a few people tell me that one time I told a teacher, I said, well, I when I just left the community, and I said, well, I'm not so much a part of that. And he said, well, that's interesting because he's standing next to you. And then I had somebody else tell me he was standing behind me. So I'm happy to know nothing. I don't really care why anymore. And, every day I know less than I did. And I'm happy to just share in whatever ways that I can with the client base that's growing, and the gurus are sending the clients, and I'm very happy to serve in that way. And I feel that I've been prepared the whole 50 years. It's not like I'm late to the party, and I'm okay with that.
And do you feel that either Yogananda or Kriyananda are much closer to you? Which one of them do you feel closer?
Not Kriyananda, no, not so much. Yogananda, and Yuteshwar. Somebody told me that we met some people that were channeling Babaji, and they told me that that I was a cousin to Yuteshwar in a previous life, not necessarily Yuteshwar by
Yes.
name, not that entity, but in a previous life I was a cousin, and so I feel pretty close to all of them, and more. And more. It's not an exclusive situation, but to honor the role that they do have in my life, in this life. I don't even want to call it
Indeed.
my life, but this life is important because it keeps me humble and focuses me on greater truths than I could uh, come to on my own.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Indra, you mentioned that you've been coming to India for the last 25 years with this break because of COVID. How do you find, or have you seen major spiritual changes in the fabric of the society over these years?
Well, the spiritual changes or
Yes,
just
spiritual
changes?
changes. Spiritual changes,
Spiritual
yes.
changes. Well, I had a teacher talk about the idea, which isn't really a new idea, but the idea that this whole guru disciple way of living was sort of ending, that all the great teachers have passed on, and there are still some teachers in India, but they're not considered the great. I don't know because they're older, but I mean somebody like Neem Karoli Baba, who Ram Dass wrote a book about him, and in the book, if you add up the years, the guy had to have been 350 years. You've got ancient grandmothers that knew him as when they were young, and he didn't look any different than he looked today. And when you add up all the years, he lived about 350 years. Well, the teachers now, that isn't what's going on. It's changed in when I first got to Rishikesh, the only yoga was at the Shivananda ashram, and now there's yoga schools everywhere, and there's some questions about the quality, there's some questions about the sincerity, there's some questions about the depth. There are teachers that will say, and it's like, for 10 years we've been doing this, and it's like, okay. But what has happened is it's just broadened out, and it's sort of a natural progression. That's part of Dwapara Yuga, I believe, that it's just spreading out everywhere. And when I started, like in 1970, 71, the word karma was like, what the heck is that? And like karma, and like maybe in the 80s you'd use the word and somebody would say, what's that? And it's like 6 months later they're using it, and it's like now it's like mainstream TV, karma, no big deal. And so the stuff is spread out all over the world. I don't think there's a town in the world, maybe North Korea, that doesn't have, two or three yoga classes or centers going on every corner of the world. And so that's new. That's not about India, but that has spread from India. They call it Rishikesh the yoga capital of the world. There was no yoga here in 1999 other than Shivananda, and that is a change. But with the gurus leaving and the teachings going online and teaching being channeling, being there's a story I was told years ago that the guy knew that he needed a guru, the Indian, that he needed to be a guru in order to become the teacher, of whatever he was going to teach. And so he went down to the river and he saw an old guy and he took his picture, and now he had a guru. And while we can laugh at that and make fun of it and smirk at it, that's throughout the Pari Yuga. It's just exploding. And does it stay ethical? No, but I mean, there was a lot of ethicals around Theosophical people and the Taro people and Crowley people, and I love them, but I mean, just there was a lot of questions back then. That's not really new, So Gurdjieff, people wondered about ethicals with him. I love him, It's not that I'm negating him. I'm just saying this is nothing new. So this has always been part of the spiritual path because people don't really understand it, and they try to understand it in the limited way that they can understand it, and you have to kind of surrender and let go. That's the only way to understand it.
Yes, there are so many changes, as you mentioned, and we have to adapt, assess, acknowledge what's good and what's less good, and discard that part, and move on with the teachings we resonate with, either with a guru or without, but with maybe spiritual practice that help us move forward. I mean, this is
Absolutely,
my
and
essence.
I just thought of something really important, a big change now that I think about it, is that the Indians are coming. They're now part of they've kind of, the whole East and West, which was Baba Gita Yuteshwar, write a book about the universalities of the religion called The Holy Science, showing passages from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. And I've been on more than one train in India, and I take the Indian point of view, and the Indian is taking the Western point of view. And now Rishikesh is exploded after COVID, with all the Indians finding the phrase here is luxury meets nature. And while there's no spirituality in that particular phrase, the fact is that they come and they this is the doorway for them to become more and more centered in the teachings, and if you squint the eyes, you really can't tell the difference between East and West anymore. It's kind of funny that to me, funny, not haha, but funny that 1894, that it was important to prove that the world's religions had a commonality. I think that point has been made. I don't think that's a point we need to make anymore. I think that's the universality of the world's religions is rather clear. The universality of the world is rather clear, and East and West has kind of blended. That I saw this example the other day. There's a restaurant up on the main street now called the Big Burger, and I haven't been in, but the other day, as I was taking my daily walk, I saw an Indian woman sitting in her car, and the guy brings over a milkshake, and she's drinking her milkshake in the car, and it's like I just could imagine this was her dream. I forget the movie, that there was, the roller skates and the people serving the drive-ins in the 1950s, and here she is, she's sitting in her car, and she's getting a milkshake, what looked like a milkshake, brought over to her car. She doesn't have to get out of her car, and she has a car. It's like it's the whole dream. She has the car, and she can sit in the car, and they're going to bring her milkshake out to her from the Big Burger. I mean, I just felt like, she had made it, and I was so happy for her.
Yes, and because you mentioned the emerging ideas or religious ideas and spirituality between East and West, I recently read a book which chronicled the fact that in the 15th and 16th centuries, when the Spaniards discovered the South America, the Mayans were amazed at what the Christians tried to teach them had similarities with their own beliefs. So if we consider the Mayans the A and the Spaniards the B, and we talk about the C, which is Eastern, and B and C melt, that means A equals C in the end, and everything is pretty much the same with various nuances, and that's it.
Absolutely, and to think any other way has an immaturity to it.
Yes. You also mentioned Bhagavad Gita, a book which had a big impact on my life, to be honest with you, many years ago. How did you react when you first read the book?
The Bhagavad Gita?
Yes.
I can't say that I have any reaction. I don't know that I've read the Bhagavad Gita. I probably did. I can't say that the particular teachings and the particular languaging, I can't say that that was my main sphere. I'd say I'm more of a practical person. I'm not so much ceremonial, and I'm not so much I've come to be a bit of a teacher, but I wouldn't say that it's not the David Frawley Vedic scholar type of a person. In fact, I'm sort of anything but that. I kind of have, in fact, I've kind of run away from all of the rules. I don't actually believe in them. I find them to be limited and not of this age. And so I kind of that was not my skill base.
Understood. Perfect. Thank you. Indra, over so many years spent in India, have you attended a Kumbh Mela? And if yes, what was your impression?
I did. And you know, interestingly enough, I was there with a group and we went around. It's a bit crazy. Um, what I ended up doing was I was doing recording for the ashram that I was involved in at the time. And I ended up getting about 43 sound bites, some of them long. So I just recorded all the noises, starting with the chanting blasting at 6 a.m. or whatever. And I made a wonderful recording of it. I put it all together into a tribute, I guess you could say, and where it's very quiet at the beginning, and then it builds up, and then there was an event at the ashram with cheering and guns going off, and that was kind of in the middle, and then it sort of went back to quiet. I don't remember how I ended it, but it kind of went back to quiet, and so while it was a visual event, the place where the three rivers meet, and the other side, we go to the other side, and everybody encamped, and so many people. It was kind of overwhelming as far as a visual and an experiential, but I found the sounds to be a sort of a dialogue for me. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's the one that comes to mind, that it was sort of I took it down to a auditory event, and I found that to be incredibly meaningful. It was so big you couldn't really encompass it to make sense of it, and whatever you saw was only a tidbit of it. And this was in Allahabad, so it wasn't one of the ones in Hardwar, which is close to us up here in Rishikesh. But we went down to Allahabad and did it down there, 2007, I believe.
Interesting. And I think the next one is next year in 2025. And I would like to create that opportunity to attend, to see once in a lifetime event how exactly smell the environment and hear the environment and feel it. And yes, it's a unique experience.
Yeah, there you go. It's yeah, it was very interesting. beautiful time.
Indra, you are specialized in Anagram readings. I would like to expand on this side of what you are doing for your clients.
Okay.
So how do you run the readings? What are the main readings you are doing? I think one is called Navamsha, which I wasn't aware of. I would like you to expand
So
if you can.
the basic thing is that I started studying astrology when I bought Holy Science and Autobiography of a Yogi in 1971. I also started buying astrology books, and I take it back to the idea that I was mathematical as a child, and so the astrology appealed to me. I can't tell you any more than that. Past life, probably. So I started studying, and I studied really intently for a number of years, and then I kind of hit a wall with it that I didn't really know how to take it further. That we didn't have internets, we didn't have we had books, but I had moved to Oregon at that time, living on 80 acres, and the I wasn't near the metaphysical bookstores anymore. And I sort of had a block, and then I moved into a Indian ashram, and eventually, when I came back around to astrology in the 90s, it turned out to be more Vedic astrology, and I was interested in it, and I had a good friend who's an astrologer who's coming here in a few weeks. I see him here, I never see him there. And he became professional. I had some others that became professional, but I wasn't so interested. And then one day somebody suggested that I might be interested in the Enneagram, which I had never heard of before in 99. And I went to a class. And during that weekend, I saw, well, let me put it this way. The thought occurred to me that there's a connection between astrology and Enneagram, because Enneagram seemed astrological to me. Triads, 9 points, 12 points, types. I've come to see that the Enneagram is like I call astrology is like the track coach. It's all elbows and knees, how to get it's small pieces. It's how to get the 100-meter time down. And an Enneagram is like the fan in the stand watching the whole race, that they're very similar. They're watching the same race, but they're watching them in different ways. And perhaps pulled into me. I attracted a teacher. I found the name of a teacher who could teach me, who taught me his interpretation of the relationship of the Enneagram and astrology. He said that there were only 3 people who knew what he did and where he was, and I found one of them. And so that became a life's mission. So in this first weekend, I thought, I want to do astrology and I want to encompass it with Enneagram, 1999. And I studied with him. A few months later, I studied with him in Hawaii. He was living in the place I wanted to go, which was Kauai, Hawaii. And he was, at the time, living a mile away from somebody that I knew and could stay with. And another guru, setup, whole thing. Come to find out, Babaji's into the Enneagram. Who knew? He was probably the one that got me there, even though it seemed like it was a human. So I studied the Enneagram and astrology with a very mystical teacher who eventually disappeared from my life. And it took really another 10 or 12 years to be at the point of, I'd started another business as I started traveling in 99. When I went to Hawaii, then I went to India for the second time, but the first time on a long trip, first time coming to Rishikesh. And I started a importing business, importing handicrafts, which was sort of a completion of another energy from my life. And I did that for about 12 years. And excuse me, at the time, I was studying astrology and Enneagram and practicing on anybody I could, whether they asked me or not, whether they wanted me to or not. And eventually I couldn't do the business anymore. I got kind of tired. It wasn't that I was old, which I was old, but it just wasn't the time. I was in uh Saturn Mahadasha, Saturn period, and that's all breaks, and so I slowed down and down and down and down. I couldn't do the traveling the same way anymore, and it was time to do the Enneagram and the astrology. And so one year I said I'm going to put up flyers, and I started being an astrologer here. I spent 2 years before reading, I don't know, 25, 30, 50 books, intense studying of all sorts of things with no plan, just going from subject to subject, that bits and pieces that were holes that I didn't know were holes, but they were completing my education, or not completing, but continuing my education. And so I ended up that what I do is I offer a life reading. The life reading, the main reading is 3 hours, an hour and a half of the Enneagram, taking you through your core triggers, explaining your personality and pattern behavior, to be able to see your obsessions and compulsions, to let them go. I say the reading is essence to essence, higher self to higher self. We're going to talk about personality, but we're not talking to or from personality. I spend an hour on the Vedic astrology, strengths and weaknesses of the chart. And then I do a half hour on this modality that I have come to call the Wheel of Totality, which was a total gift from the gurus. It's a discussion of the empty houses. Nobody talks about empty houses. Every house contains awareness. And if you don't have a planet there, then it's a blind spot or a place of ignorance. And we don't start working on those until 50. And why is that? Because in 20s and 30s, we're building up our ego and identity. We're not interested in our deficiencies. And so this is an incredibly deep reading. And that's the main reading, is the life reading. Now, during COVID, I added Navamsha, which I knew about for 25 years, but never understood. Navamsha is the spouse chart, but it isn't the spouse we marry. I believe it's the perfect spouse. And who is the perfect spouse but us at our highest? And so it's who we become, that we have the personality structure of the natal chart. When we overcome the deficiencies and blind spots of the Wheel of Totality, then we become the Navamsha chart. And also I've added location astrology, which I also knew about for 25 years, but never felt to get involved in. And then all of a sudden I did. And this has been a real boon to the business. They are along with relationship readings and family dynamics readings, they give a more complete picture, that I have tools to I mean, I can give you a basic astrology reading and we can do that, but then I've got all these other tools are there to help you where you should live, and what's with the energy of the place, and then who you become, and what's happening with the people around you. And so I have when I do the fairs, which I do some of those, I have a lot more offerings, and I feel it's a more complete picture. It makes me a more complete astrologer. It makes me more complete human. And they were initiations, as far as I'm concerned, from the gurus again, to when I was ready, then the thought appeared that it's something I wanted to do, which I never had that thought it was something I wanted to do for 25 years, but all of a sudden it came, and I didn't fight it. I like to say that it's the openness. And my approach is science and intuition. It's the science is the modalities themselves, and the intuition then takes over, which I feel is coming from the other person's higher self, that they're saying, ask me about my childhood. Okay, what about your childhood? I wasn't thinking about their childhood, but then all of a sudden this appears, and it could be from the gurus, it could be from God or channels or angels. I think it's from the other person's higher self.
Very interesting and very broad opening to into ourselves pretty much. And then you mentioned that you will discuss about location. Do you pinpoint a country or a large area? Just, I'm interested in that.
Okay, so thank you, but you're an excellent listener. I really appreciate this. So it's astrocartography. I call it location astrology because the astrocartography are the lines that the map that Jim Lewis started with the astrocartography, and it's just one aspect of location. I actually consider the relocation chart to be more important than the lines. The lines are like sizzle. They can be kind of intense. There's mundanely, most people start with, well, I want a relation, I want my mate. Where's my Venus line? But it doesn't really work that way, like most things. We bring baggage with us, and so our Venus may not be good. And that's why you're not finding your mate where you are. You got something to work out. Every place is equal in one sense, though there are where the lines occur. They are powerful places, but some of us are not ready for powerful places. Um, so so a lot of the location reading is going back to the natal chart and talking about the energy of the particular planets in order to find out what's your strength and weakness, and so we can figure out where you need to be. And I end up suggesting to people that the places where there aren't lines are really important. I call them quiet places. You can think of it as the mountaintop. There are times looking at your picture that in the background there, where the mountaintop is where you need to be. You need to be in the quiet place. You need to learn to hear your own thinking. You need to come to a neutral place before you move forward. You need to get to neutral in order to move forward. People go from reverse to forward, and it creates whiplash. And so I take it into a process, and had a really interesting experience. I'll just give you an example the other day with a lady who was who her natal chart, she's got 6 planets in the angular houses. That's 1, 4, 7, and 10. And those are the cardinal energy. It means that she's very activated and very strong personality, even if she is doubtful, strong personality and very in gear. And she moved to a location where they're in the relocation chart. So the relocation chart is the moment of birth, but with a new place. So we call that a relocation chart, and you bring your natal chart with you, but you're kind of under a different influence. And where she moved, there weren't any angular planets. So she kind of moved to the shadow where she doesn't have to confront this incredible energy, which was a little bit too much for her. And it was really interesting to see that, without knowing it and without even realizing it was her plan, she did the reading without the camera, and she moved to a place where there were no angular planets. And this alone was kind of mind-blowing. If you understand, the people out there, if you understand what I'm saying, is that she found a place to hide in plain sight, and it's what she needed in order to become stronger within herself, and she found it. And so with the location astrology, we can take all of that into account, and then we can make suggestions. I don't necessarily go to a conclusion, because it's really up to you, because it's it's not a Shangri-La, it's not like, it's not going to end like a Disney story. There's pluses and minuses. Sometimes it'll work out, but quite often it's kind of a mixed picture, and it's, everybody wants a warm, cheap place where nobody is, and and nobody wants to live on the Arizona desert, which it's cheap and it's nobody there. They want the cities where it's expensive. So it's a bit of a blend, but I like to think that the people get the answer to their questions because they understand more their situation and how they feel about a place, and the positives and negatives of their own situation and where they're living and where they're looking at. And then they come to in that clarity, they can then kind of a solution sort of appears, rather than it being you need to move to X location. It's kind of like an attitude, and usually people need to let go of attitudes. They say to me, I want to find a place that's ease and grace. And I say that's an inside job. It's not a place. It's an inside job. And so clients really can understand it a lot clearer at the end of a reading.
Yes, and I think this reading is very important because immigration these days and for the last, let's say, 20 years is a very large phenomenon. I mean, I moved from Europe to North America and then for a short stint to Central America, and we didn't resonate with that location, and we had to move back. So there is so much population movement from one area to another, and for some people it could be a cultural shock, let's say from India moving to North America. Even if they know in general how it is, they can still have a cultural shock. Energetically, North America is different than India and that part of the world. So their bodies and their energies have to adjust to what's going on the new home.
Absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of migration, and I'm happy to help with that. But I also think that I try to, my approach is more holistic, and in that I'm hoping to give them the deeper answers, because quite often isn't about moving.
Yes.
And it's about changing attitudes, not so much about place. It's more about changing attitudes. And of course I deal with the place too, and give them solutions on that. But I've come to find that it isn't so much about the lines. It's more about the relocation chart, I think, is much more important, and doing your own work and understanding what are your blocks. Why are you not happy where you're at? Because if you got to get happy, a new place isn't necessarily going to make you happier. And if it's and it's going to exacerbate any tensions you have within you. So that's the way I look at it. And it's I didn't plan to get there. I didn't even know, I didn't have a plan about any of it, it has never been none of it's been my plan, but very happy to serve that way. And it's really it's the dream I always had, and I'm busy with that and my writing, and I'm very, very, very feel blessed by this life and the opportunities that it has given this humble being.
And we have the opportunity to listen to this type of experience, and that's great. And staying on the astrology path, I am aware that the Vedic astrology also touches on overall events like world events and predictions for next year or the next decade. Does the Anagram readings somehow can bring more light in this type of events, or they just stick to the person at the personal level?
Well, I should say I don't do any predictions. I'm not really interested in any of the world events. I'm interested in moment to moment, and that's what I can give. And I don't I don't really care, and I don't care about previous lives because if you knifed somebody 8 lifetimes ago, what is here now? Not what did you bring or what was then, right here, right now. That's what I share. The Enneagram, the Enneagram is personally related, but it's your whole world environment because when you understand the Enneagram story of all of the people around you, that the parents that you can never forgive, and the brother you can never forgive, and the mate that you don't understand, and the kids who were um, not understandable either. The Enneagram takes care of that immediately. And in the releasing of your own story is the releasing of their story. And in that, the whole world makes sense. You make sense out of something that made absolutely no sense. And so that's how the Enneagram does its part to realize that we are there are 9 pieces, that we're a social species and that we need the 9 skills. We don't need the 9 obsessions and compulsions so much, but we need to work through those in order to have the 9 skills, because if we all had the same personality, not much would get done. And so we see that countries have personalities, we see that animals have personalities, and cities have personalities. They all have Enneagram. Anything that has a personality has an Enneagram, and we see the interconnectedness, the Ken Wilber kind of interconnectedness of all things. And the Enneagram is a big part of that. And so when you squint a little bit, you go beyond the, or maybe you even get your eyes big, and it includes the track coach and the fans in the stand, and that you see it all as one picture rather than as individual or aspects that and that the Enneagram. Gurdjieff said that we won't, if you understand the Enneagram, you don't need the world's libraries, that the Enneagram contains everything. And so there you go. I mean, nobody really understands what any hardly anything that the man said, but we can't fight it, even if we don't understand it. And so I think he's right that the truths are one, the paths are many. And so when you take the Enneagram to its highest level, you come up with as many truths as the Bhagavad Gita, or as many truths as the as Vedic astrology and quantum physics. May as well throw that in too.
Yes, and we have to be grateful to the gurus and the divine for dropping this information and to us, and allowing us to feel and understand and be aware of such concepts.
Yeah, I'm thinking of toys, like it's the what are the Lincoln Logs, what are the ones that you put together that are popular? The Lego. It's
Lego.
like it's all Legos, it's all little Legos that we get to put together, and that's as the adult toys that you spend lifetimes on these subjects, the Enneagram, the Vedic astrology, any of them, human design, also from a dream world, numerology, any of them, it's all lifetime of study.
Indeed. Indra, there is anything else we didn't touch on regarding the services you can offer with such a wealth of experience?
Well, I do spiritual counseling. It ends up being spiritual counseling. I call them, sessions with the astrology, with modalities at science and intuition. But I end up getting more and more difficult people with difficult situations that that the experience helps. It's not for everybody. The gurus send people, and I like to use the modalities. I find it to be a nice place to start. I probably could just rip off without it, but I find that that's a good doorway, and that it works pretty well. I want to give your listeners, I have two free offers. The two free offers are, actually, I have now put up my free, I can send you the free Enneagram test, but I have now, as of yesterday, put it up on my website. Finally, my new website that I put together in, I believe it was December. I put the new website together, one of my India projects I've been working on. And yesterday I put the Enneagram test. So they're now free on my website, indrarinsler.com, all one word. And but if you want to write me and get the free test, which was my offer, you can do that. And the other offer is your Vedic astrology chart. If you email me your date, time, and place of birth, I will send you your chart back. I will send you a little bit of a cheat sheet so you can read it a little bit, and I might make a comment or two. It's not a free reading, but it is your birth chart, and you can start from there. So that's what my free offers to anybody that writes in.
Thank you very much, Indra. And as we are approaching the end of the interview, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts is to love yourself, love God. There's nothing wrong. You can't make any mistakes. There's no good or bad. There's no right or wrong. Everything just is.
Yeah, and maybe another thought which I heard you say even during this interview: happiness is an inside job.
Happiness is an inside job. Yes, I do say that, and you know, the thing is that we can get old and we can connect the dots better, and we can see how everything fit together, but we have that opportunity to see it, maybe not day one, but day 10,000. You know, we can see that at any stage of life. We can slow down and appreciate and have gratitude in each moment, and we don't have to wait for Judgment Day. So thank you so much for having me on and letting me share with you and the audience.
Thank you very much, Indra. All the best, and have a wonderful time in India.
Yeah, thank you.
And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, like it. Visit spiritualinspired.ca or claudiumurgan.com. And until next time, love and gratitude.